Hey, I'm Kev, Mr. Cole. Welcome to the final episode of my 7-part look back at the 2015 Verizon IndyCar Series season. In the last episode, we looked at the title rivals of this Team Penske, as we look at the final of the big three in the Verizon IndyCar Series. For the past few years, we had wondered who was the best overall driver in the Verizon IndyCar Series. You could certainly point to Will Power perhaps being the fastest, but the best overall. Well, in seasons past, you could look at Dario Franchitti, Dan Weld, and even Power himself. But in the past couple of years, one driver established himself as a cut above the rest. So for Chip Ganassi Racing, they have an all-time great, a fantastic lead actor in Scott Dixon. But in 2015, you did have to wonder about his supporting cast. That's not to say the supporting cast was terrible in 2015. As we saw at Sonoma, they can work really efficiently as a team, and they really delivered Scott Dixon and Chip Ganassi Racing that title, which is probably their main aim heading into every season. But they really showed that they can work as a team at that season finale. But there were some question marks raised in my eyes about the supporting cast and how long they will be in that role. But let's begin with the main man. The number 9 belonging to Scott Dixon, the 4-time champion now in the Verizon IndyCar Series. He won it all in 2015 with 3 wins, 4 podiums, 2 poles, 2 fastest laps, 7 top 5 and 12 top 10 finishes and 556 points. Competed in all 16 races, finished 15 of them with 14 lead lap finishes. His best start were poles at the Indy 500 at Mid-Ohio, second at the Indy GP, third at Long Beach and fourth 4 times. His best finishes were wins at Long Beach, Texas and Sonoma, third at Alabama and fourth at the Indy 500 at Mid-Ohio. His average start was 6.1, fourth, his average finish was 7.7, second, and he had one retirement due to a crash in the second race in Detroit, and he had 306 laps throughout the year, 44 at Long Beach, 2 at Alabama, 1 at the Indy GP, 84 at the Indy 500, 1 in the second race in Detroit, 97 at Texas, 7 at Fontana, 14 at Milwaukee, 22 at Mid-Ohio, and 34 in the season finale at Sonoma. So Dixon did it once again, grabbing a title from right under the noses of Penske, like he did in 2008 after a tight title battle with Helio Castroneves, like he did in 2013 when with 3 rounds left, like Castroneves had one hand on that title, but then the Brazilian ran into mechanical issues in Houston while Dixon dominated until he wrapped up the title in Fontana. Well, in 2015, heading to the season finale at Sonoma, Dixon was 47 points back from Montoya, and in normal circumstances you thought, oh, he's kind of out of it, but of course for 2015, IndyCar had double points onto the season finale. So if Dixon won and Montoya finished outside the top 5, things would get interesting, and they duly did. As after qualifying, it still looked like Montoya had one hand on the title, as his teammate Will Power grabbed pole, his teammate Pagenaud was 4th, Montoya himself qualified in 5th, so if he just finished there at the end of the race, that would have been his title. Of course, Cashin was kind of out of it, down in 15th. While for Dixon, he qualified down in 9th. I got out-qualified with Charlie Kimball, he was 7th, but he had his teammates all around him. He had Saavedra in 10th and Kanan in 11th, so they could effectively move as a pack up the order, and that's kind of what happened in the end, as Penske kind of imploded. Montoya got a bit too aggressive against Power, leaving them an open goal, and then all the Chip Ganassi drivers chipped in. Every single one led at least one lap during the race. Even Saavedra looked competent in the lead during his stint, and in that final part of the race, Dixon just waltzed to the win and waltzed to his 4th IndyCar title, putting him among the all-time greats, equaling his total of his great friend and former teammate Dario Franchitti as well. And so for Dixon, he has really established himself perhaps as the best driver in IndyCar now. 2 titles in the last 3 years, finished in at least the top 3 in the last 9 years in the Verizon IndyCar. That's 9 years of brilliance from Dixon. But if there's a chink in his armour, because he's sublime round all of the different types of ovals, sublime on the road and street courses. We know about his fuel-saving habits during the race. More often than not, it looks like he makes fuel rather than loses it. But there's one chink in the arm, and he's talked about this in the off-season, wants to address it for 2016, is that he can have a slow start to seasons. Particularly saw this in 2013, where Chip Ganassi were nowhere in the first half of that season. We thought, he's given himself too much to do in the second half of the year, but Chip Ganassi got their shit together. Dixon won 3 straight after Pocono and in Toronto, and as I said, Judy grabbed that title in the end. In 2014, only grabbed 1 podium in the first half of that year before winning a couple races in Mid-Ohio and Sonoma to grab 3rd in the championship in the end. In 2014, he did leave himself too much to do in the end. But in 2015, after finishing 15th in St. Pete, one of the rare tracks where he hasn't won at, he had air jack issues, so he had slower stops during that race. And then at Noda, grabbed the fast lap on his way to 11th for it's another slow start from Dixon. And the question was going to be, what's he going to do in the next few races for the rest of the first half of the year? Is he going to leave himself too much to do in the second half of the year? Well, he almost did in the end. But at Long Beach, he had a sublime race. He qualified quite hard, jumped Montoya at the start, and then was battling Helio Castroneves for the win in that first part of the stint, or for the lead at least. And then after around a pit stops, Castroneves got slightly held up by his Brazilian buddy Tony Kanaan, which enabled Dixon to jump the Brazilian, and Dixon just duly drove away from the pack in the end that race and grabbed his first win at Long Beach in an IndyCar. That was quite surprising to me. He won back there in Indy Lights in 2000, but never in an IndyCar. And then we headed to Alabama, where he got his usual podium, a remarkable record he's got around Barber Motorsports Park. 6 races there in an IndyCar, 4 second place finishes, and he grabbed 2 third place finishes the last couple of years. He can always rely on Dixon grabbing a podium there, it seems like. And then we head to the month of May, perhaps a worse month for May than Dixon expected, as at the Grand Prix of Indianapolis. Maybe Castroneves was a bit jealous of his Long Beach win, as he punted round Dixon at the first corner. Just a lazy move from the busy, and then Dixon recovered to finish in 10th in the end. Then at the Indy 500, he grabbed pole in controversial circumstances and led the most laps during that race with 84. But the surprising thing about that race was in the last stint, it involved him, Charlie Kimball, Will Power, and Montoya, as his teammate Tokunana crashed out, and Simon Peugeot dropped back due to a self-inflicted incident. But in that last stint of the race, Dixon didn't have the pace to battle for the win. He was battling Kimball for a podium, and in the end, Dixon lost that to finish 4th. So it wasn't a month of May that Dixon perhaps expected, only grabbing 10th and 4th there. And then in the first race, Detroit grabbed the top 5. But in the second race, Kimball unwittingly punted his teammate off. He forced him off the road, and Dixon went into the wall, grabbing his only retirement of the season. So after that first half of the year, just one win, just one other podium. You're like, is Dixon again falling back? But then he responded brilliantly at Texas, where in the first half of that race, it was a bit of a Penske party. Pagano leading, Power leading from pole. But when the lights came on, the Chip Ganassi pair of Dixon and Kanaan came alive, and G just drove away from the field, dominated in the end, even in the end lapping Power who grabbed that pole. So it was just a sublime performance from Chip Ganassi in Texas, and then he racked up the finishes, 8th in Toronto, 6th in Fontana, 7th at Milwaukee. But then in Iowa, he had car issues there, and Montoya of course crashed out in the early part of that race. So this was perhaps the title kind of changer in. It wasn't, a great finish, 18th at Iowa, and he grabbed the fastest lap as well. But he grabbed a few points there because of the sublime work from his crew there, fixing that car up, patching up, sending it out, grabbing the few extra points he needed. And without those points, of course, he would have been too far back heading to Sonoma. So, perhaps that was a bit of a changer there, grabbing those points while, of course, Montoya suffered that big retirement. And then at Mid-Ohio, grabbed pole and ended up 4th there. He was stuck in the pack behind Pagano, if I remember correctly. And then at Pocono, finished 9th, while Montoya grabbed the podium. So heading to Sonoma again, we thought he's too far back, but it turned out well in the end for Dixon. And that's the thing he's got to address in 2016. He's got to get more podiums than that first half of the year. And as I said, that's perhaps his only chunk in Dixon's armour. But the main thing I noticed, going through the stats, the big difference between Montoya and Dixon that I saw in 2015 is that when Montoya won, he was battling. As I said in the last episode, he was battling for everything. At St. Pete, you could argue he's perhaps in control heading into the final stint, but he still had to put in the laps, jump his teammate in the pit stops, and hold off Power when Power attacked in that last stint of the race. And then, of course, the Indy 500 battling his way through the field after an early setback and blistering his way, to that win at the end. Well, for Dixon, when he won at Long Beach, at Texas, at Sonoma, more than not, he led the most laps, and he was just dominant. He was in cruise control. When he turned it on, he was unmatchable. And the anomaly was the Indy 500, where he led over 80 laps. He's battling for the win for most of that race, but just as I said, in that final stint, final part of that race, he didn't have the pace. It was the Penske pair of Power and Montoya battling for that win in the end. But overall for Dixon in 2015, as I said, I think he highlighted that he's the best driver in IndyCar. He's got a great infrastructure at Chip Ganassi, and going forward, he's going to be the guy for them, for the next at least 5 years, I reckon. With the way he drives as well, he doesn't have many accidents. He perhaps could go for even longer because, he just seems to be taking great care of himself as well. Very settled, in his family life. So for Dixon, it was just another example of just his brilliance in 2015. There's another thing he's perhaps got to look at is perhaps winning another Indy 500 to really push the credentials up as perhaps being the greatest ever American open wheel racer. But 2015, the Iceman cometh once again. So on to the first driver of the supporting cast, and that is the veteran Tony Kanaan. Has the Brazilian and the number 10 car finished 8th in the championship with 3 podiums, 6 top 5 and 10 top 10 finishes and 431 points. Competed in all 16 races, finished 13 of them with 12 lead-out finishes. His best start was 2nd at Iowa, 3rd at NOLA, 4th at the Indy 500 in Milwaukee, and 6th 3 times. His best finish was 2nd at Texas and Fontana, 3rd at St. Pete, 4th at Sonoma, and 5th at Long Beach and Mid-Ohio. His average start was 7.6, 6th, and his average finish was 9.9, 8th. His 3 retirements were due to crashes at the Indy 500 and Pocono and a drivetrain issue at Iowa. He led 213 laps throughout the year, 30 of them at the Indy 500, 57 at Texas, 3 at Toronto, 23 at Fontana, 3 at Milwaukee, 70 at Iowa, 21 at Pocono, and 6 at Sonoma. So for Tony Kanaan, it was a kind of a similar type of year to 2014, his first year with Chip Ganassi Racing after moving from KV Racing Technology, where he won the Indy 500 in 2013. But in 2014, it's an adjustment type of year, but he still managed to grab 6 podiums, including a win at the season finale in Fontana on his way to 7th in the championship. Well, in 2015, I think we perhaps expect him to grab more podiums, grab more wins, and perhaps push on towards a top 5 finish in the championship, but that didn't happen. In fact, he only grabbed 3 podiums throughout the year at St. Pete in the season opener. Great drive from him, and he started off the year quite well. It's 6th at NOLA, 5th at Long Beach, Alabama, a race didn't quite work out, but then at the Grand Prix of Indianapolis he finished 7th, and in the Indy 500 there a number of laps, was battling for the win in that race until about a quarter left of the race. He went into the wall out of turn 3, if I remember correctly. And that seems to sum up Tony Kanaan's Chip Ganassi career, at least win-wise, where he has such superb pace most of the time, but something just gets in the way when it seems to be his day. And then at Detroit, that weekend didn't work out at all. So the first half of the year, it's only 1 podium and only 1 other top 5 finish. Quite disappointing. As I said with Scott Dixon, it was a slow start to the year. And it did improve in the second half of the year for Kanaan, particularly at Texas. It showed immediately, finishing 2nd there behind his team leader, leading a number of laps, even battling with Dixon at times. It's a superb outing for Kanaan. He grabbed 6 at Toronto, another podium at Fontana, where he didn't quite have the pace to challenge Rahal after a late restart as he finished 2nd there, and then another 6th place at Milwaukee. So into the final quarter of the season, it was a bit of a turnaround for Kanaan, that kind of third quarter of the season. And then at Iowa, had his best qualifying of the year on the front row, and, led a number of laps and was looking really strong for the win until his drivetrain broke. As I said, something always seems to get in the way of him grabbing a win with Chip Ganassi. Fontana is definitely an anomaly. But then at Mid-Ohio, grabbed a top 5 there. Then at Pocono, another retirement, another heavy crash like at the Indy 500. And at Sonoma, finished 4th after qualifying down in 11th. Very solid race from the Brazilian there. And in the end, he finished 8th in the championship as Ryan Hunter-Reay leapfrogged him with that podium in Sonoma. So for Kanaan, in the end, it looks like a quite disappointing year. Only 3 podiums, and only 3 further top 5 finishes, 4 further top 10 finishes, 10 top 10 finishes out 16 races. They had over 200 laps on 8 different races, but didn't grab a win. A bit like Castroneves at Penske. That's perhaps the one statistic that really stands out, that he didn't manage to grab another win with Chip Ganassi Racing. And perhaps a bit like Castroneves as well. Heading into 2016, he's perhaps going to be, he's 41. Kanaan, I think he's the oldest full-timer in the Verizon IndyCar series, and he seems to be always looking over his shoulder now. It always seems to be a rumour about who's going to take his seat. Particularly strong rumours of Joseph Newgarden in the off-season before he re-signed with Counter Racing. Newgarden's perhaps going to be looked at for that seat in 2017 as well, as apart from Dixon and perhaps Kimball as well with his strong sponsorship package, the other Chip Ganassi seats are very much dependent on money. Even Tony Kanaan, a series champion in 2004, an Indy 500 champion in 2013, even he needs to bring sponsorship to his seat. And as I said, he's on the wrong side of 40, hasn't performed particularly outstandingly with Chip Ganassi Racing, definitely a driver on the decline, but still a very solid performer. His number of top 5 finishes in 2015 was more than Charlie Kimball, Sebastian Fager and Sage Kerman combined, so he's still very much an asset to the team. Of course, very experienced driver, over 200 races in American Open Wheel Racing, over 100 top 5 finishes, and at times just under 20 wins as well. So, Kanaan brings a lot to the team. Of course, got superb chemistry with Dixon, very good powers there. But 2016, he's perhaps got to perform. He's got to grab some wins. He's got to grab his top 5. He's got to get that boogie, off his back to help him grab more wins, as he perhaps can't afford another year like he's had in 2014, like he's had in 2015. They're doing enough to support Dixon for the championship, of course, but as I said, I expected a step up from Kanaan in 2015, and it didn't really happen. He needs it to happen perhaps in 2016, or else, as I said, a Newgarden might take his seat. Cohen might be back in the mix. You never know if he finds sponsorship. So for Kanaan, bit of a disappointing year again in 2015, but you can't afford that perhaps in 2016. And the final full-time cast member for Chip Ganassi Racing in 2015 was Charlie Kimball in the number 83 car, as the American finished 12th in the championship with 2 podiums, 1 fastest lap, 3 top 5 and 5 top 10 finishes and 372 points. Competed in all 16 races with 13 finishes and 9 lead lap finishes. His best start was 6th at Mid-Ohio, 7th at Milwaukee and Sonoma, 9th at Texas and 11th at Alabama. His best finish was 3rd at the Indy 500 and Sonoma, 5th at the Indy GP, 7th at Texas and 8th at Fontana. His average start was 13.3, 15th. His average finish was 13.1, 16th. His 3 retirements were due to crashes in the first race in Detroit and Iowa and handling issues at Pocono. He led 21 laps throughout the year, 1 at the Indy GP, 10 at the Indy 500, 1 at Texas, 7 at Iowa, 1 at Pocono and 1 at Sonoma. So for Charlie Kimball, it's another season that makes you go, Has that 2013 season is starting to look like an anomaly, where he finished 2nd at Pocono, 1 at Mid-Ohio, outraced Simon Pagenaud to that win on his way to 9th in the championship. Apart from that, he had a difficult rookie year in 2011 when he finished 19th in the championship, just like he did in 2012. In 2014, he was 14th in the championship. In 2015, he was 12th. But in 2013 and 2014, he got 10 top 10 finishes. In 2012, he got 6 top 10 finishes in the 14 races he competed in. While in 2015, as I said, only 5 top 10 finishes in 16 races. Perhaps shows how much more competitive IndyCar was, or perhaps shows some regression on Kimball's part, as the 31-year-old Californian came over to America after he found out about diabetes when he was racing in Europe. Kind of put his career on hold, but he has rebuilt his career in his native land, competing in Indy Lights in 2009, finished 10th in the championship then. 2010, finished 4th in the championship AFS racing and Andretti Autosport, but he never won a race in Indy Lights, and he's perhaps shown in IndyCar that this is kind of his potential fulfilled now. As in 2015, he started off the year poorly. At St. Pete 21st, Noda 14th, Long Beach 15th, Alabama 12th, before he had the best month of May out of all of the Chip Ganassi racing drivers, as he finished 5th at the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, just like he did in 2014. And then at the Indy 500, yes, the strategy went his way, but he led 10 laps, set the fastest out of the race, on his way to 3rd in that race, one of only 2 podiums throughout the year, and outraced his teammate Scott Dix in that last stint of the race. It was quite impressive from him, but then in the first race in Detroit, it came crashing down back to earth with a crash in that first race. He got caught out on that straight after turn 2, and to be fair, lots of drivers got caught out on that straight during that Detroit weekend, particularly in the second race, as he finished 11th in that race. So at the end of the first half of the year, Kimball was 10th in the championship, but that was mostly down to that Indy 500. It did improve in the second half of the year, 7th in Texas, 8th in Fontana. They had 7 laps at Iowa, despite crashing out in that race. And then at Pocono, had a horrifying qualifying crash, but rebounded in the race at a 12th place finish there. So, hence the season finale, he had dropped outside the top 10 now, but it was a bit better in the second half of the year, and he really highlighted that at Sonoma, where he was the best Chip Ganassi driver in qualifying in 7th, and drove a very nice race. Led a lap during the race on his way to 3rd, and another podium to end the year on his way to 12th in the championship. So for Kimball, very much a mixed bag during 2015. His couple of retirements were due to crashes at Iowa and Detroit, and in the end he did have handling issues in Pocono, even though he was classified as 12th in the end. So for Kimball, as I said, 2015 perhaps suggests some regression, and to be fair, over his 5 years in the Verizon IndyCar Series now, he hasn't really done a lot in that seat. Only 11 top 5 finishes, 3 of them coming in 2015, 33 top 10 finishes in 84 races, with that 1 win at Mid-Ohio in 2013. And to be fair, Graham Rahal didn't do a lot in the kind of seat he had alongside Kimball in 2011 and 2012 in that similar position, but since fully kind of been integrated into the full team since then. 2013 of course got that boost start, but last couple of years, as I said, perhaps that's Kimball at his best, even though the championship order was improved in 2015. In 2014, double points were counted for the 500-mile races at Indy, at Pocono, at Fontana, and he did miserable at those races. So apart from those 3 races, he perhaps would have finished in the top 10 in the championship once again. As I said, lots of top 10 finishes in 2014, but not a lot in 2015. And so heading into 2016, I'm not really sure what to expect from Kimball. As I said about Muniz's 2015 season, they kind of disappeared for long stretches of the season, then they reappeared for a couple of races. Will he do the same in 2016? I kind of get the feeling he will, but he did get that big result at the Indy 500, big result at Sonoma. Maybe he'll carry some confidence into 2016 and maybe improve as well. But for 2015, it was an average year for Charlie Kimball. Finally, we move on to the number 8 car, as it was shared between the Colombian Sebastian Saveja and the 2013 Indy Lights champion Sage Karam, and it's the American who we're going to cover first, as he ended up 20th in the final standings with 1 podium, 2 top 5 and 2 top 10 finishes and 197 points. He competed in 12 races, finished 9 of them with 4 lead lap finishes. His best start was 3rd at Milwaukee, 10th at Texas, Fontana and Iowa, and 12th at Alabama and the first race in Detroit. His best finish was 3rd at Iowa, 5th at Fontana and 12th at the second race in Detroit and Texas. His average start was 14.5, 21st, and his average finish was 15.8, 24th. While his 3 retirements were due to crashes at the Indy 500, Milwaukee and Pocono, and he led 12 laps throughout the year, 5 of them at Fontana and 7 of them at Pocono. So I've been fortunate in recent years to have lightning in a bottle rookies. In 2014 we had Carlos Munoz and Mikhail Eshkin, while in 2015 that guy was Sage Kerm. If you watch the season you certainly won't forget the name, and he had some sublime moments, but he had some equally as crazy moments, perhaps even more crazy moments as well. And this is a guy who made his debut in the Verizon IndyCar Series at the Indy 500 in 2014 with John and Reinbold Racing. Was very impressive, finished 9th in that race after starting on the back row of the grid in 31st. Unfortunately, he got a bit overshadowed by Kurt Busch in the Andretti Autosport car, finishing 6th and doing the double as well. He's a NASCAR driver by trade, and he had to hop on the helicopter to go over the Charlotte to do the Coca-Cola 600 that they do. And of course on the same day there's the Monaco GP, but I don't think I'll see any F1 drivers trying to do the leap across the Atlantic and do the triple. But in 2015, Sage Kerm got his chance with Chip Ganassi Racing, even though he had to share the seat in the end with Sebastian Savages. The funding wasn't quite there to do the whole season, and in the early part of the year he got lots of flack, for being involved in quite a few incidents and not getting the results, like at St. Pete with 19th, Noda at 18th, Alabama once again with 18th, and then at the Indy 500 he got taken out by Sato in the early part of that race, a very much a rookie move from the Japanese driver there. And then in Detroit, where he perhaps got the most flack afterwards, where in the first race he made some great moves. I think that was the race where he overtook 3 drivers. I might be getting my Detroit races confused there, but he also got into some incidents as well, and particularly in the second race again. And after that weekend, after the first half of the season, there were some question marks about Kerm being in that Chip Ganassi ride. Maybe he needs some more time away. This is an Indy Lights champion who missed the 2014 season, and he had to go away and do some sports car racing on the side. Only had that Indy 500 out, and so for 2015 you would have thought he'd be prepared now, but in that first half of the year, perhaps not after those first 6 races, but in the next 5 races he certainly showed that he perhaps is ready to be an IndyCar driver, even though again he was perhaps known for being aggressive at Fontana, where everyone else was aggressive as well, but he grabbed a top 5 finish there. Then at Milwaukee got his best qualifying of the season, superb 3rd place, but the race didn't turn out as good, as he tapped the wall and into retirement he went. And then at Iowa, perhaps the most noteworthy race of his career, where he finished on the podium after getting into it with Ed Carpenter, getting into it after the race as well. Well, on Carpenter's side certainly, and Kerm he kind of even though I didn't grow up with AJ Foyt, he kind of reminded me of AJ Foyt, being this kind of brash and being quite aggressive. It's kind of what we see from AJ Foyt now, as in his later years, and what AJ Foyt is kind of known for as well. And there's a bit of it seemed like, in Kerm. And then at Mid-Ohio had a bit of a disaster, a bit like Charlie Kimball, kind of lost count the number of times he went off. At least on Kimball's side. For Kerm, he had that one off, which caught the ire of particularly Montoya and Penske. But then we went to Pocono, and he had a superb race going on. He was driving well, he got into the lead, and then he lost the car in the first corner. I certainly don't blame the crash on him, and I know some people just lashed out at him just because, more on reputation it seemed like, more than the actual incident. But he he lost the car. Lots of drivers did that race, and unfortunately, you know what resulted. And you saw how he kind of tore him up afterwards, and it's going to be interesting to see how he rebounds in 2016, getting back into that IndyCar at the Indy 500 once again with Ryan Reinbold racing after losing his full-time ride due to just not having sponsorship with Chip Ganassi. They've let go of him now, and he's going to be driving, I think it's a Lexus sports car. He's going to be driving alongside Scott Pruitt in that car after the Indy 500. So for Carm, it's going to be interesting to see how he tackles the Indy 500 2016, getting into the car for the first time, you know, after that crash in Pocono. But, you know, during the year, he definitely showed, you know, in those 5 races in particular, he definitely showed he had the pace. Not on the road and street courses, he was abysmal on them. I kind of don't understand that, as he definitely showed he had pace on the road and street courses in, you know, Star Mazda and USF 2000 and Indy Lights as well. But for some reason, he never quite showed it in an Indy car. So that's perhaps one aspect he's got to work on. Of course, going to sports cars, that will really help him. But he's still only 20. We've got to remember that as well. He's got a big career ahead of him, be it in an Indy car, in a sports car. We don't know yet. But I really do hope we see him more regularly in an Indy car in the future, as he definitely showed something in 2015. You may take that in different ways, you know, depending on who you are. But to me, yes, he was raw, he was brash, but he's a driver I think that IndyCar need. So I really hope he can get over his sponsorship rows and becomes a regular fixture in the Horizon IndyCar series in the future. The kid is box office, and if a team can just craft his raw talent, he could become great. So the 40th and final driver who competed in the 2015 Horizon IndyCar Series season is Sebastian Cerveja, who was in the number 8 car and the number 17 at the Indy 500. As overall, he finished 25th in the final standings with 1 top 10 finish and 96 points. He competed in 5 races, finished 4 of them and all of them on the lead lap. His best start was 8th at the Indy GP, 10th at Sonoma, 11th at Long Beach and 17th at Toronto. His best finish was 10th at Long Beach, 13th at Sonoma, 16th at Toronto and 17th at the Indy GP. His average start was 14.6, 22nd. His average finish was 15.8, 23rd. His one retirement was due to a crash at the Indy 500, and he led 12 laps at Sonoma. So we started off this review series by covering a useless Colombian, and we're going to end with one as well. Perhaps that's unfair on Cerveja in 2015, though, as he showed something he previously hasn't done in the Horizon IndyCar series, and that is pace. Okay, he showed squirts of it previously, but in 2015 he actually looked like a competent race driver. It only took him to join one of the top 2 teams in the series to do that, though, and he was leaps and bounds better than he was in his previous 5 seasons in the Horizon IndyCar series. And it's a bit strange talking about how useless Cerveja is in IndyCar, as he showed promise in the junior Formula. In Indy Lights in 2009, he finished 3rd in the championship as Rookie of the Year, winning that honour ahead of other IndyCar drivers such as James Hinchcliffe, Charlie Kimball and Pippa Mann. Then in 2010 he finished 8th in the championship with Brian Herter Autosport, competed in the Indy 500 that year before joining Conquest Racing at the end of the 2010 season. Then in 2011, unfortunately no real results to speak of, not even qualifying for the Indy 500, as he was very much with a back of the field team. Then in 2012 he dropped back to Indy Lights, finished 4th in the championship with Andretti Autosport, competed in Indy 500 and a couple other races before he finally got a full-time seat in 2013 at Dragon Racing alongside Sebastian Bourdais, where he grabbed a couple of top 10 finishes on his way to 21st in the championship. Then in 2014 he was once again alongside Bourdais, but this time at KV Racing Technology, where he grabbed 1 top 10 finish, 1 pole position on his way to 21st in the championship once again. And in both of those full-time seasons he was last of the full-time drivers in the championship. So when Chip Ganassi Racing announced they'd be driving a number 8, basically making it a full-time effort in 2015, I was a bit sceptical. But at Long Beach he started 11th and finished 10th in that race. A very good performance from him, just like he showed at Long Beach in 2014 where he finished 9th. So perhaps that's a venue where he actually goes well at. And he seems to qualify well at the Grand Prix of Indianapolis, where in 2014 he grabbed his only pole so far in the Verizon IndyCar Series. Unfortunately, he couldn't get away from the grid, which caused a massive accident. Fortunately, in 2015, he did manage to get away from his 8th place starting position, his best qualifying of the year. Unfortunately, the race didn't turn out as well, as he ended up 17th, last of the lead that finishes. Then at the Indy 500, he started 28th, and with about an 8th of the race to go, he was near the back of the pack, and in turn 4 he lifted, as in front of him there was madness. He didn't want to get involved in that, but unfortunately behind him Jack Hawksworth didn't react in time, punted the Colombian round. They both hit the turn 4 wall and rebounded onto the track, where unfortunately Stefano Coletti couldn't avoid the front of the number 17 machine, which caused Savager to suffer a foot contusion. But it didn't mean that he missed any of his scheduled races, as he turned up to Toronto. He didn't really show himself there. And then at Sonoma, the season finale, he qualified 10th. And thanks to strategy, he led 12 laps during that race. Looked very good in the lead as well. Unfortunately, due to strategy as well, he actually ended up in 13th. And so 25th overall in the championship. So despite being a partial season, it was perhaps Savager's best season in an IndyCar so far, as he ended up with identical average starting average finish stats compared to Sage Curran. But the young American competed in more races, and in the last 5 races of his season he just showed more, with top 5s, podiums, and leading a number of laps. And while Savager led a number of laps in Sonoma, grabbed a top 10 at Long Beach, grabbed a few top 10 starting positions, he just didn't have the impact that Curran had. And being in his 6th season, his 4th partial season, what he did in 2015 won't impress anyone. And this is a guy who has 4 top 10 finishes in 60 races now, with that 1 pole at the 2014 Grand Prix of Indianapolis. So overall, Savager's not looking very good, but he has good backing from AFS, and it looks like he will return in 2016 at the Indy 500. It's been rumoured that he'll link up with Andretti Autosport once again, just like he did in 2012. And with the way that it is in IndyCar now, in motorsports in general, that money's perhaps more important, than talent at times. You could perhaps see Savager clinging and hanging around IndyCar for a few years yet, but I also think it would perhaps be good for him to look to sports cars and carve out a career there, like we've seen with Gustavo Yackerman, who was decent in Indy Lights as well, never made the jump up to IndyCar, but has carved out a career there in sports cars. I think Savager could do the same in the future. But overall in 2015 it was competent from Savager, but doesn't impress me much. But overall Chip Ganassi did, and in particular Scott Dixon. There we go, we have done every team and driver from the 2015 Verizon IndyCar Series season. Covered every team and driver from the 2015 season. I hope you have enjoyed watching these as much as I have putting these together, and let me know in the comment section below what you thought of the 2015 season, about the teams, about the drivers, about the oval racing, about the area kits, about the racing in general, and the sport in general as well. Just let me know down below. But that's the 2015 season done and dusted now on this channel. What can you expect from this channel for the 2016 Verizon IndyCar Series season? Well, the past couple of years I've tried this monthly preview and review thing with Power Oversteer. Last year, unfortunately, it didn't really work out too well, as I was kind of ill and away for quite a bit, and so I found out near the end of the year I just left myself too much to cover, doing all of these kind of reviews of events which happened months ago and were largely quite irrelevant by then. So for the 2016 season, again under the Power Oversteer banner, I'm going to do a preview and review for every race, just like I did in 2013. I know it gets a bit congested in the middle part of the season, but hopefully it will work out and it'll be, much better that way rather than what I've been doing the past couple of years with the monthly stuff. And as I said, sometimes I could miss month and it just left me too much to do. But hopefully with this format, it's a bit better doing it this way. So I hope you can enjoy lots of power oversteer this year, much more than the past couple of seasons put together. You know, a bit more like 2013 when I made almost 60 of them that year. I'm not sure I'm going to make that many this year, but as I said in my kind of comeback vlog, the aim was about 25 or 30. Hopefully I can do that with all those previews and reviews of this season. So that's what I'm going to do during the season. But before then, of course, we got to preview the 2016 Verizon IndyCar Series season, and that will be coming next month. So sign out for watching, and I will see you next time.